Thus the 100 feast until dined. Until each at his couch took the gift of that soon as d lot pounds at the hounds Ulysses and the sons of Odysseus to Rhinition his bushy sides ere long attained as the Sunday 550. Smite through it, o'er fast-falling showers pervade. So thick it was, and underneath the ground, with litter of dry foliage strewed profuse. Hunters and dogs approaching him, his ear the sound of feet perceived, upridging high. His bristly back and glaring fire, he sprang forth from the shrubs, and in defiance stood near and right opposite. Ulysses first rushed on him, elevating his long spear. he intercephalion of the Boeotians and Phocans. Shall I not therefore be mocked, unjustly treated, if I be cogitum? Ed on the accusation of Demosthenes, the patron of the THC bands, and of all the Grecians the moil, abandoned, when the Phocians and Boeotians appear in my defense. But he hath dared to affirm, that I fland confided by my own expreflians. For he phase, I declared, when I cuffed timers lies, that all mankind had heard of the infamy of his impurities, that Phlefiad, an excellent poet, phase. What all report can never be a lie. Unborn a goddess, fame can never die. Liate this goddess now comes to accuse me, for all mankind. Affirm, one have taken bribes from Philip. But you are well convinced, Athenians, that there is a mighty difference between fame and calumny. Fame hath nothing in common with prosecutions, but prosecutions are nearly allied to calumny. I will define each of them exactly. Fame is the voluntary afferion, without any particular motive, of a multitude of citizens concerning the commission of any certain fault. But calumny is an accusation maintained by fomfingalperfonin, the preference of the many, whether in our assemblies, or the Senate. To fame we publicly offer sacrifices, as to a god. But we publicly prosecute calumniators, as wretches mocked him. Pious. Do not then, deem Athens, confound things of highest excellence with tough of extreme turpitude.
Alright. Shall we proceed with the rites? I was reading Demosthenes. You were the wind and I the sea. There is no splendor anymore. I have grown blank as the pool beside the shore. I'll say William Blake. And I'll ask, listless means basically lethargic, lazy. What tired you out? How was my definition? Close enough? There is no magic anymore. We meet as other people do. You work no miracle for me, nor I for you. You are the wind and I the sea. There is no splendor anymore. I have grown listless as the pool beside the shore. And though the pool is safe from storm and from the tide has found surcease, it grows more bitter than the sea for all its peace. What a bitter poem. It's gotta be hark. Hearken. Oh, hark. Oh, we actually got one from the right. Yeah? No, it was nice. I like the last line in the poem. This kind of shorter line really makes the poem kind of abrupt and thereby it expresses the bitterness well. Okay, let's dive back into the rights. We shouldn't dilly-dally while we don't have any character. I'm gonna put on my Goujan again. Yeah. No crawling around in mere literature without heaven The child has been brought up by the western steps and is held in front of the coffin with his face to the blank, while the officer of prayer stands at the southeast corner of it. All this geomantic directionality. East. North. Confucius might have cut your head off if you guessed east instead of north. It would have been for our own benefit if he cut our head off. A great cause, such as danger from enemies or death, and the consequent blank, which especially in the case of a father's death, required the son thus to afflict himself. It looks like a leggy footnote. Nonetheless, consequent. Whoa! Whoa! I guess you're picking up a theme there. Rejoicing that you got morning correct. Rather peculiar. So that was from can't seem to find the footnote. Oh, there. When a man stops during the daytime in his inner chamber, it is allowable to come and ask about his illness. When he stops outside during the night, it is allowable to come and condole with him. Indeed. Hence a superior man, except for some great cause, does not pass the night outside his chamber. And unless he is carrying out a fast or is ill, he does not day and night stop inside. Oh wow, look at me, I'm not a superior man. I'm sitting at home. A lot of mourning in here. With breast unbared and blank, the cincture instead of the cap, he wails and leaps. What is a cincture? I think it might be a headdress. I'm gonna say loosening. Oh yeah, a robe. Oh yeah, the ribbon-like robe. It's like a scarf. Wailing and leaping. wearing. On the death of his wife's brother, who was the successor of their father, the husband should wail for him in the court of the principal chamber. He should appoint his own son to preside on the occasion. With breast unbared and wearing the cincture instead of the cap, he wails and leaps. Wow, so you take off your hat, you wrap that scarf around you, and then you leap and wail. When he enters on the right side of the gate, he should make someone stand outside of it to inform comers of the occasion of the wailing. Hey everybody, this guy's gonna come wail. Come listen. And those who were intimate with the deceased will enter and wail. If his own father be in the house, the wailing should take place before his wife's chamber. If the deceased were not the successor of his father, the wailing should take place before a different chamber. This is like bizarre, like architectural, genealogical cosmology. It really shows that the living and death world were exactly the same, including property rights. I went to a museum exhibition, and they would bury with people their deeds to their houses, so that in the world of the dead, they could still have ownership over the land. The minor minister will ascend and take away the blank of silks. It'd be nice to run this streamcast with as much precision as these rites. He was pretty rigorous at times. Speaking of rights, let's while you're pondering your silks, why don't we search through the analects for other mentions of the rights, so we can gain some insight in how we're supposed to study and follow them. Oh, okay. Thanks for illuminating that. I never actually understood what these emoticons are. Oh, okay. That was actually very funny. Proceed with your subtle Kappa commentary. I can't stand this song. Alright, I'm about sick of this Guzheng. So here's some quotes about the rites. Mang Yi-zi asked about filiality. He said, "Don't disobey." Fan Chi was driving him, and he said, "Mang Sun asked me about filiality. I said, it consists in not disobeying." Fan Chi said, "How do you mean that?" He said, "While they are alive, be useful to them according to the proprieties. When dead, bury them according to the rites. Make the offerings according to the rites." Tzu Chang asked if there were any knowledge good for 10 generations. He said, "Yin, because there was wisdom in the rites of Xia, took over some and added, and one can know this. Zhou, because it was in the rites of Yin, took some and added. One can know what? Someone will thread along after Zhou, be it to 100 generations. One can know." And here we are, aren't we? Well, I'll take your failure to fill in a blank as an abdication of your sacred dignity and go on to the next blank here. Bundle. Oh, I got basket. That was pretty close. Let's see why the minor minister is going up there with his bundle of silks. Oh, this was a note. Here we go. Book 5, Section 1. Zhang Zi asked, if a ruler dies and a son and heir is born, what course should be adopted? That's pretty important. Confucius said, the high nobles, great officers, and other officers following the chief minister, who takes charge of the government for the time, should collect at the south of the western steppes with their faces toward the north. Then the grand officer of prayer, in his court robes and cap, bearing in his hands a bundle of rolls of silk, will go up to the topmost step, and there, without ascending the hall, will order the wailing to cease. Cease the wailing! Mournfully clearing his voice 3 times. That's a tricky thing. Oh! He will make announcement to the spirit of the deceased ruler, saying, the son of such and such a lady has been born. I venture to announce the fact. He will then go up and place the silks on a stool on the east of the body in the coffin, wail and descend. All the relatives of the deceased who are there at the mourning, the high nobles, the great and other officers, with the women in the apartments, all will wail, but without the leaping. Aha, there is the key. Only the right people may leap. When this burst of sorrow is over, they will return to their proper places, and proceed forthwith to set forth the mourning offerings to the dead. the minor minister will ascend and take away the bundle of silks. There we go. So he only takes it away, but who was it that brought it up? It was the Grand Officer. The Grand Officer brings it up, but the minor officer takes it away. Oh, that was the part we already got. You know what I should do? I should actually increase the number of sentences. Let me see if I have that functionality queued up and ready. I think I might. Yeah, let me try this here. If this works, I will be quite impressed. It worked. Wow. I am really amazed. Sitha was a name of office, the Ministry of Instruction. But it had become, in this case, the family name from some ancestor of King Z, who had been Minister of Instruction. This is Leggy's footnote. His father, he had only one small carriage, with the offerings to be put into the grave, and he returned immediately from the grave without showing the usual blank to his guests. Well, I'm gonna go with your trump card here and guess mourning. The ruler of a state has 7 bundles of the offerings, and 7 such small carriages for them, and a great officer 5. Oh, I see. See, the great officer has 5 carriages for 5 bundles of silk. Attentions. Attentions. Ah, I see. So, he doesn't waste any time at personal affairs, but goes... well, I'm gonna have to look this up. I seem to have lost this. Oh yeah, okay. Okay. Part 2. Duke Mu asked Zisi whether it was the way of antiquity for a retired officer still to wear the mourning of his old ruler. Oh, really? Huh. I once knew someone who did some research on the emperors immediately before the Democratic Revolution, and they had these elaborate elephant carriages that were quite extraordinary, but very strange. Princes of old, was the reply, advanced men and dismissed them equally according to the rules of propriety. And hence there was that rule about still wearing mourning for the old ruler. But nowadays princes advance men as if they were going to take them on their knees, and dismiss them as if they were going to push them into an abyss. It is not good if men so treated do not head rebellion. Is it not good if men so treated do not head rebellion? How should there be the observance of that rule about still wearing mourning? At the mourning rites of Duke Dao, Qi Kaozi asked Mang Qingzi what they should eat to show their grief for the ruler. Qingzi replied, "To eat gruel is the general rule for all the kingdom." The other said, "It is known throughout the four quarters that we three ministers have not been able to live in harmony with the ducal house. I could, by an effort, make myself emaciated. But would it not make men doubt whether I was doing so in sincerity? I will eat rice as usual." Look at that guy, trying to cut corners. Very convenient, Kaozi. Always bending the rights for your own convenience. When Citu Qingzi of Wei died, Zixia made a visit of condolence to his house. And though the chief mourner had not coupled the slight dressing of the corpse, coupled? Is that even a word? He went in the headband and robe of mourning. Oh God, he's gonna... What's he thinking? Ziya paid a similar visit, and when the chief mourner had completed the slight dressing, he went out, put on the bands, returned, and wailed. Where's the jumping? You can't wail without jumping. Zixia said to him, "Did you ever hear that?" "I heard the master say," was the reply, "that until the chief mourner had changed his dress, one should not assume the mourning bands." God, I mean, Zixia, like, get with the program. Zhangzi said, "Anzi may be said to have known well the rules of propriety. He was humble and reverent." Yuzhou said, "Anzi wore the same robe of fox fur for 30 years. Wow. Now that is following the rites. At the burial of... Alright, at the burial of his father, he had only one small carriage, but a very nice fox fur coat, with the offerings to be put into the grave, and he returned immediately from the grave without showing the usual attentions to his guests. Phew! The ruler of a state has 7 bundles of offerings and 7 such small carriages for them, and a great officer 5. How can it be said that Anzi knew propriety? I wasn't saying that. Don't look at me. Zhangzi replied, "When a state is not well governed, the superior man is ashamed to observe all ceremonies to the full. Where there is extravagance in the administration of the state, he shows an example of economy. If the administration be economical, he shows an example of the strict observance of all rules." I like to imagine, I remember imagining like the President of the United States doing a full prostration when they meet Xi Jinping. It's just proper ceremony. On the death of the mother Kuo Kaozi, he asked Zikang, saying, "At the interment, when all are at the grave, what should be the places of the men and the women?" Zikang said, "At the mourning rites for Zetu Kingzi, when the master directed the ceremonies, the men stood with their faces to the west, and the women stood with theirs to the east." "Ah," said the other, "that will not do. I mean, come on." Adding, "All will be here to see these mourning rites of mine. Do you take the sole charge of them? Let the guests be guests, while I alone act as the host. Let the women take their places behind the men, and all have their faces toward the west." Yeah, come on. What are you doing facing your face toward the east? Oh my god. There's so much of this. Ugh. Makes me want to crawl into the grave with my bundle of silks and never come out. You can kind of see why a ruling class so occupied with this was very easy to conquer in the 19th century. Instead of defending China, they were too busy counting up how many people were facing what direction. Yeah, that's like staying home sick rather than taking your test. That'll show them. You guys figure it out. I'm sitting pretty here. Trying to move this thing over here. Alright, there we go. Okay. The eldest son of the king and his other sons, the eldest sons of all the feudal princes. The answer is not attentions, by the way. The sons, by their wives proper of the high ministers, great officers, and officers of the highest grade, and the eminent and select scholars from all states, all repaired to their instruction, entering the schools. Oh, according. It's gonna be according. Yeah. Well, this looks interesting. This is about education. Let's look this up. Okay. Here we go. The Minister of Instruction defined and set forth the 6 ceremonial observances to direct and control the nature of the people. Clearly illustrated the 7 lessons of morality to stimulate their virtue. Ooh, I wonder what those 7 lessons are. Inculcated uniformity in the 8 objects of government. Wow. To guard against all excess. Taught the sameness of the course of duty and virtue to assimilate manners. Nourished the aged to secure the completion of filial piety. showed pity to orphans and solitaries, to reach those who had been bereaved, exalted men of talents and worth to give honor to virtue, and dealt summarily with the unworthy to discountenance wickedness. Damn, I want that job. Minister of Instruction? Yeah. He commanded that throughout the districts there should be marked and pointed out to him those who were disobedient to his lessons. Yeah, I'd say so. Ours is, we essentially live in an oligarchy. And then we don't have meaningful integration of moral systems into our aristocracy. Aristocracy is a plutocracy. And then once you're amongst the rich, there is no moral basis other than weak applications of diffuse Christianity and Judaism that don't have any meaningful application to actual ruling. This having been done, the aged men were all assembled in the school, and on a good day, archery was practiced and places given according to merit. At the same time, there was a feast when places were given according to age. We don't even have that. Like, basic respect for older people. That's just diffuse and often disrespected. The Grand Minister of Instruction conducted thither the eminent scholars of the state, and along with them superintended the business. Notice here that the scholars are managed by the state. And this actually occurs too, but in an indirect way, where you'll have like scholars of public relations firms or you know, analysts inside corporations, or people who work for think tanks that, you know, do US foreign policy, you know, things like that. It's again a kind of a decentralized anarchy. Okay, this is very, very interesting. Thank God we're out of the mourning god. I guess we did what we needed to there. If those who had been reported to him did not now change, he gave orders that they who were noted as continuing disobedient in the districts on the left should be removed to those on the right, and those noted on the right to the districts on the left. Oh, look at that. This is them shuffling the bureaucrats around the empire. The Chinese government still does this to this day. Like, for instance, one thing the Chinese government did is they took the heads of all the telecom companies. There's like 3 or 4 large telecom companies that are basically state-owned enterprises in China. And a few years ago, they swapped all the CEOs and top leadership of the companies in a single decision, which is an unimaginable occurrence in Western industry, since the state has no say over leadership. Even though it does happen anyway, according to CEO headhunting, but then it's just done on the basis of, I don't know, who can be paid the most by the most captured board of governors of the corporation. And now, look, they're going to have an examination. Then another examination was held in the same way. And those who had not changed were removed to the nearest outlying territory. So they gave them a chance to change and then examine them. Still continuing unchanged, they were removed after a similar trial to the more distant territory. They just keep moving you farther and farther away. There they were again examined and tried, and if still found defective, they were cast out to a remote region and for all their lives excluded from distinction. Orders were given that throughout the districts, the youths who were decided on as of promising ability should have their names passed up to the Minister of Instruction, when they were called select scholars. He then decided which of them gave still greater promise and promoted them to the Great College, where they were called eminent scholars. In this exhibit I saw too, like, there's all these different there's all these different hats that they wore depending upon the grade of scholar that you were. And they're not even like different colors, they're like totally different shapes. Those who were brought to the notice of the minister were exempted from services in the districts, and those who were promoted to the great school from all services under his own department, and by were called complete scholars. Oh, look at this. The board for the direction of music gave all honor to its 4 subjects of instruction, the 4 arts, and arranged the lessons in them, following closely the poems, histories, ceremonies, and music of the former kings, in order to complete its scholars. Look at that. They have a board of music that synchronizes the ancient songs that tell the histories. And that music is used to synchronize the scholars in virtue, according to merit. The spring and autumn were devoted to teaching the ceremonies and music. The winter and summer to the poems and histories. Wow, look at that seasonality. Spring and autumn, ceremonies and music. Winter and summer, poems and history. The eldest son of the king and his other sons, the eldest sons of all the feudal princes, the sons by their wives proper of the high ministers, great officers, and officers of the highest grade, and the eminent and select scholars from all the states, all repaired to their instruction, entering the schools according to their years. When the time drew near for the quitting the college, the smaller and greater assistants and the inferior director of the board put down those who had not attended to their instructions and reported them to the grand director, who in turn reported them to the king. The king ordered the 3 ducal ministers, his 9 other ministers, the great officers and the other officers, all to enter the school and hold an examination. If this did not produce the necessary change, you can see the seeds of Chinese thought control here. The king in person inspected the school, and if this also failed, for 3 days he took no full meal nor had music, after which the culprits were cast but to the remote regions, sending them to those of the west, called a temporary expulsion. To the east, a temporary exile, but all their lives they were excluded from distinction. The Grand Director of Music, having fully considered who were the most promising of the completed scholars, reported them to the king, after which they were advanced to be under the Minister of War, and called scholars ready for employment. Okay, the best scholars, rather than going and working for Wall Street or high tech, they go right to the War Department. The Minister of War gave discriminating consideration to the scholars thus submitted to him, with a view to determine the officers for which their abilities fitted them. He then reported his decisions concerning the best and ablest of them to the king, to have that judgment fixed. When it was, they were put into offices. After they had discharged the duties of these, rank was given them, and their positions being thus fixed, they received salary. Now there's a meritocratic job market. An internalized, managed by the king, meritocratic civil service. And this is the Book of Rights, which was compiled by Confucius in 500 BC. It was just compiled at that point. Whereas, I think it was probably since Confucius was studying it, it was already together. So this is recording the practices of China for the last several thousand years prior. When a great officer was dismissed as incompetent from his duties, he was not again employed in any office to the end of his life. At his death, he was buried as an ordinary officer. If any expedition of war were contemplated, orders were given to the Grand Minister of Instruction to teach the scholars the management of the chariot and the wearing of the coat of mail. Ooh. Look, the scholars learned to drive the chariots and wear armor. In the case of all who professed any particular art, respect was I think that means given, given to their strength. If they were to go to a distant quarter, they had to display their arms and legs, and their skill in archery and charioteering were tested. So rather than going to these cushy conferences where no one pays attention to you in the general public, you have to go out in chariots and arms and show off your archery skills. All who profess particular arts for the service of their superiors, such as prayer makers, writers, archers, carriage drivers, doctors, diviners, and artisans, all who possess particular arts for the service of their superiors, were not allowed to practice any other thing or to change their offices. And when they left their districts, they did not take rank with officers. Those who did service in families also, when they left their districts, did not rank with officers. The Minister of Crime adapted the punishments to the offenses for which they were inflicted and made the laws clear in order to deal with criminal charges and litigations. He required the 3 references as to its justice before the infliction of capital punishment. If a party had the intention, but there was no evidence of the deed, the charge was not listened to. Where a case appeared as doubtful, it was lightly dealt with. Where it might be pardoned, it was still gravely considered. In all determining on the application of any of the 5 punishments, well, here are the 5 punishments: branding, cutting off the nose, cutting off the feet, castration, and death. So, applying any of the 5 punishments, it was required to decide according to the judgment of heaven. Inadvertent and redeemable offenses were determined by the circumstances of each particular case. This is interesting. Here's the whole legal system. When hearing a case requiring the application of any of the 5 punishments, the judge was required to have respect to the affection between father and son, or the righteousness between ruler and minister, which might have been in the mind of the defendant, to balance his own judgment. Well, Confucius, he ordered executed a whole troupe of musicians because they misplayed the ceremonial music. He must consider the gravity or lightness of the offense and carefully try to fathom the capacity of the offender as shallow or deep to determine the exact character of his guilt. He must exert his intelligence to the utmost and give the fullest play to his generous and loving feeling to arrive at his final judgment. If the criminal charge appeared to him doubtful, he was to take the multitude into consultation with him. And if they also doubted, he was to pardon the defendant. At the same time, interesting, look, he takes to the multitude. So somehow the minister opens up the question of the guilt of the person to the general population. At the same time, he was to examine analogous cases great and small and then give his decision. The evidence in a criminal case having thus been all taken and judgment given, the clerk reported it all to the director of the district, who heard it and reported it to the Grand Minister of Crime. He also heard it in the outer court and then reported it to the king, who ordered the 3 ducal ministers with the minister and director again to hear it. When they had once more reported it to the king, he considered it with the 3 mitigating conditions and then only determined punishment. Those mitigating conditions were ignorance, mistake, and forgetfulness. Sounds reasonable. In all inflictions of punishments and fines, even light offenders that were not doubtful were not forgiven. Punishment may be compared to the body. The body is a complete thing. When once completed, there cannot be any subsequent change in it. Hence, the wise man will do his utmost in deciding on all these inflictions. Oh, check out this one. Splitting words so as to break the force of laws. Look at that. That is a crime. That describes the entire law profession in modern times. Splitting words so as to break the force of the laws. Confounding names so as to change what had been definitely settled. Ditto. Practicing corrupt ways so as to throw government into confusion. The Republican Party. All guilty of these things were put to death. Listen to this. Using licentious music. Strange garments. Wonderful contrivances and extraordinary implements. I don't even think they get castration. I think straight to the gallows. Look at that. Wonderful contrivances and extraordinary implements, thus raising doubts among the multitudes. That's like technology itself. Raised too many doubts about the state. Death. All who used or formed such things were put to death. It's like alchemy. The accusation of alchemy. Those who were persistent in hypocritical conduct and disputatious in hypocritical speeches. Good God. There's going to be a bloodbath when China takes over the world. Who studied what was wrong and went on to do so more and more, and whoever increasingly followed what was wrong so as to bewilder the multitudes. These were put to death. Damn right. Kill them motherfuckers. Those who gave false reports about the appearance of spirits. Well, there goes the Christian church. About seasons and days. About consultings of the tortoise shell and stalks, so as to perplex the multitudes. These were put to death. Well, don't want to practice astrology anymore. These 4 classes were taken off, and no defense listened to. Damn, finally, some order. All who had charge of the prohibitions for the regulation of the multitudes did not forgive transgressions of them. Those who had rank tokens, I guess that's subscribers in Twitch, watch out, the long or the round, and gilt libation cups were not allowed to sell them in the marketplaces. That's selling of offices. Nor were any allowed to sell robes or chariots, the gift of the king. So much for government contracts. Or vessels of an ancestral temple. So much for turning churches into condos. Or victims for sacrifice. Or instruments of war. So much repurposing missiles into SpaceX tourism. Or vessels which were not according to the prescribed measurements. So much for government surplus. Or chariots of war which were not according to the same. Or cloth or silk, fine or coarse, not according to the prescribed quality, or broader or narrower than the proper rule. So much for second-hand stores. Or of the illegitimate colors confusing those that were correct. Yeah, what's with all this fashion? Or cloth embroidered or figured. Oh my god, there goes the clothing industry. Or vessels made with pearls or jade. Or clothes or food or drink in any way extravagant. Oh no. Oh no. Eat your gruel or die. Or grain or which was not in season, or fruit which was unripe. Oh my god. Or wood that was not fit for the axe. Or birds, beasts, fishes, or reptiles which were not fit to be killed. At the frontier gates, those in charge of the prohibitions examined travelers, forbidding such as wore strange clothes, and taking note of such as spoke a strange language. Look at that. It's surveillance. I don't think... Did all those things get killed? I don't think... Those weren't killed. I think they were just, like, monitoring that. Wow, that's some fine regulation there. The Grand Recorder had the superintendent... Here's the NSA. The Grand Recorder had the superintendence of ceremonies. He was in charge of the tablets of record and brought before the king what names were to be avoided and what days were unfavorable for the doing of particular affairs. The Son of Heaven received his admonitions with reverence. Well, see, it's like the director of the CIA telling the president what he has to do. The office of the accountants prepared the complete accounts of the year to be submitted to the Son of Heaven, which were reverently received by the chief minister. Yeah, I bet. Packed full of free beasts of prey and other pork. The Grand Director of Music, the Grand Minister of Crime, and the Chief Superintendent of the Markets, these 3 officers followed with the completed accounts of their departments to be submitted to the Son of Heaven. The Grand Minister of Instruction, the Grand Minister of War, and the Grand Minister of Works reverently received the completed accounts of their several departments from their various subordinates and examined them, and presenting them to the Son of Heaven. You could see how if the emperor were like a 10-year-old boy, that they would have a lot of discretion at what is good or bad. These subordinates then reverently received them after being so examined and adjudicated on. This being done, the aged were feasted, and the royal sympathy shown to the husbandmen. The business of the year was concluded, and the expenditure of the states was determined. Wow. That was really interesting. That was very, very, very interesting. I have to pee. All right, let's keep plugging here. I don't wanna make any mistakes. I'm afraid now to make any mistakes. The 6 manufacturers of the Son of Heaven are under the care of the superintendents of the workers in earth. Oh, cool. Here's the industrial economy. The workers in metal, the workers in stone, the workers in wood, the workers in the skins of animals, and the workers in twigs. These preside over the 6 blank of stores. Let's do some qualitative research on the Book of Rights. I will just go on that. Departments. So, the Book of Rights, or Li Ji. Let me give this a shot. See how terrible this is.
The Book of Rights, or Li Ji, literally the Record of Rights, is a collection of texts describing the social forms, administration, and ceremonial rites of the Zhou dynasty as they were understood in the warring states of the early Han periods. The Book of Rites, along with the rites of Zuao, Zuli, and the Book of Etiquette and Rites, Yili, which are together known as the Three Li, Samli, constitute the ritual Li section of the five classics which lay at the core of the traditional Confucian canon. Each of the five classics is a group of works rather than a single text. As a core text of the Confucian canon, it is also known as the Classic of Rites, Lijing, which some scholars believe was the original title before it was changed by Daixing.
Oh, Shi Huang. That guy was a badass. He's like, let's get rid of this shit. Confucian scholars who had memorized the classics or hidden written copies recompiled them in the early Han dynasty. That's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to memorize all these texts so that in the next dynasty I can rewrite them all. The classic of music could not be recompiled. All we have is the record of music. Let's check out the record of music. See what is in there. See if I can find this. Oh yeah, exactly. Ooh, I think I might have found it. Let's see. Huh, I don't know. I don't know what I found, but it looks kind of interesting. Okay, well, let's check this out. So here we are in Book 6, Wan Wang Shisi, King Wen as son and heir. Let me give her save myself some breath here. See how terrible this sounds. Should actually probably make the voice a male to fit with proper decorum here. Oops. Bah. Oh my god. Why the hell is that not coming up? Oh my god. Alright, here we go.
1. Thus did King Wan act when he was eldest son and heir colon dash dash thrice a day he made a visit in due form to King Ki. When the cock first...
Alright, that was a little bit too quick.
One. Thus did King Wan act when he was eldest son and heir colon dash dash thrice a day he made a visit in due form to King Ki. When the cock first crowed, he dressed himself, and going to the outside of the bedroom, asked one of the servants of the interior who was in attendance how the king was and if he were well. When told that he was well, the prince was glad. At midday he repeated the visit in the same way, and so he did again in the evening, too. If the king were not so well as usual, the servant would tell the prince, and then his sorrow appeared in his countenance, and his walk was affected and disturbed. When King He took his food again, Wan recovered his former appearance. When the food went up to the king, he would examine it and see if it were cold and hot as it ought to be. 3. When it came down, he asked of what dishes the king had eaten. He gave orders to the cook that none of the dishes should go up again, and withdrew on receiving the cook's assurance accordingly. 4.
Pretty nice guy.
Two, King Wu acted according to the example of Wan, not presuming to go in anything beyond it. When King Wan was ill, Wu nursed him without taking off his cap or girdle. When King Wan took a meal, he also took a meal, and when King Wan took a second, he did the same. It was not till after 12 days that he intermitted his attentions. King Wan said to Wu, "What have you been dreaming?" "I dreamt," was the reply, "that God gave me 9 ling." "And what do you think was the meaning?" King Wu said, "There are 9 states in the west. May it not mean that you will yet bring them all under your happy sway?" Wan said, "That was not the meaning. Anciently they called a year ling. The age is also called ling. I am 100, and you are go. I give you 3 years." King Wan was 97 when he died, and King Wu was 93. 1.
Wow. That's interesting.
Three, King Kang, being quite young, could not perform his part at the eastern steps. 2. The Duke of Cao acted as regent, trod those steps, and administered the government. He illustrated the rules for the behavior of a young heir in his treatment of Pokhin, that King Kang might thereby know the courses to be pursued by father and son, ruler and minister, old and young. When he committed an error, the Duke punished Pokhin. This was the way in which he showed King Kang his duty as the son and heir. 4. So
That's
much
nice.
on the way
So
in
you
which
punish
King Wan
the
acted
gimp.
as son and heir. 5. In teaching the heir sons of the king and feudal princes, and young men, chosen from their aptitude for learning, the subjects were different at different seasons. In spring and summer they were taught the use of the shield and spear, in autumn and winter that of the feather and flute all in the eastern school. The inferior directors of music, too, taught the use of the shield aided by the great assistants. The flute masters taught the use of the spear, aided by the sub-directors, while the assistants regulated by the drum, the chanting of the Nan. 3.
I'll just put this all in here. Go through this section. Knowing the Book of Rights certainly gives you some context for how a government might work, even if you don't follow it. Did you finish uploading your videos? Okay. I'm gonna check your account. Oh, really? Let's see. Cool. Awesome, man. This is so cool. Oh, you have music too.
Alright, let's start then. Hey Denlo. Or should I call you by your real name? I don't know. Anyways, let's start. So first off, I'll be streaming the Analects. Confucius' work, which is about 2,500 years old, and as you can see, it had and still has a substantial influence on Chinese and Eastern thought and values today. So the first thing would be why I chose the Analects to stream.
Yeah. Well, can you separate out
is that I wanted to
the can you separate the morality? Can you separate the morality from the specific now all you have to do is stream me in your other videos, and then I'll comment on your comments about me.
bring something new to Twitch or to the current culture of how content is.
I'm just gonna jump around. Forgive me. I will watch it at length. I like how you
to get a
yeah, I really like how you set up the text. That's very cool. It's a good thing that the Minister of War was there in order to fight out all the crowds who were trying to raid your channel.
When you deal with others, have you in any way failed to be dutiful?
That's so cool, man. That's so awesome. Wow. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, we should definitely do like a simulcast thing. Figure out how to do that. Like do a collaboration show. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, if you'd be interested, I could show you how I do all my text. I have a kind of an elaborate machine operating behind this thing. As you can see, I'm rather cavalier with text. I am reverent, but cavalier. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can plod through this this section, and then I might go walk around. Yeah. I don't know how people do it. Whether they do Skype or I think they might just do Skype or something. That is so cool. I'm so excited. That would be amazing. No, no, not at all.
In spring they recited the pieces, and in summer they played on the guitar, being taught by the Grand Master in the Hall of the Blind. 1. In autumn they learn ceremonies, being instructed by the Masters of Ceremonies. In winter they read the Book of History, being instructed by the guardians of it. Ceremonies were taught in the Hall of the Blind, the book in the upper school. 6. All the rules about sacrificial offerings. 1. And at the nourishing of the old begging them to speak their wise counsels. 2. And the conversation at general reunions were taught by the lower directors of music in the Eastern School. 7. The Grand Director of Music taught how to brandish the shield and axe.
Whoa.
He also delivered the graduated rules relating to conversations and the charges about begging the old to speak. The Grand Perfecter of Instruction 3 discussed all about these matters in the Eastern School.
Begging the old to speak. I like that.
Eight. Whenever a pupil was sitting with the Grand Completer of Instruction, there was required to be between them the width of 3 mats. He might put questions to him, and when he had finished, sit back on the mat near to the wall. While the instructor had not finished all he had to say on any one point, he did not ask about another.
That's a good rule. Makes you wonder if the rules about castrating people are equally well designed.
9. In all the schools, the officer in charge in spring set forth offerings to the master who first taught the subjects, and in autumn and winter he did the same. 4. 10. In every case of the first establishment of a school, the offerings must be set forth to the earlier sages and the earlier teachers, and in the doing of this, pieces of silk must be used.
It's interesting. The silk offering still exists in Buddhist ritual, where you go up to the teacher and put a silk scarf before him, and then he wraps the scarf around your neck before teachings begin.
(11) In all the cases of setting forth the offerings, it was required to have the accompaniments of dancing and singing. When there were any events of engrossing interest in a state at the time, these were omitted. 12. When there was the accompaniment of music on a great scale, they proceeded immediately to feast the aged. 13. At all examinations in the suburban schools, the rule was to select the best and mark out the most talented. The pupils might be advanced for their virtue, or commended for something they had accomplished, or distinguished for their eloquence. 1. Those who had studied minor arts were encouraged and told to expect a second examination. 2. If they, then, had one of the 3 things above mentioned, they were advanced to a higher grade, according to their several orders, and were styled men of the schools. They were still, however, kept out of the Royal College. 3. And could not receive the cup from the vase restricted to the superior students.
Sweet. Special drink for the best students. $1.15? Or are you talking about the rights? This is the Analect. Book 1, 15. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's from the Book of Songs. Oh, this is an amazing song. Listen to this one. Thick oak, scrub oak, men pile for twigs. Order in government hath power to left and right. Tensile to zest men's interest. An order is held by the split seal and mace. His honorers are long-haired, suitable officers. Many and many oars take boats on Ging to meet the King of Zhou's 6 army corps. And as the Milky Way sets rule aloft in sky, in his longevity, the King of Zhou has raised up men distantly. To make true form as metal or jade he grinds, as needle that draws on silk, draws on the whole nation's mind. Okay. I might shower and get going, actually. I hope that heaven favors us with another time to reconnect. I have your videos, which I'll now watch and catch up on, and then let's make this dual broadcasting thing happen, and the sky's the limit. Before long, we'll be castrating lawyers left and right, and the will of heaven will finally find accomplishment. All right. Give your pooch a smooch. Yeah, you too.